There's the spot, Watson. By night, Goulston Street is deathly silent, which will permit us to carry out a fair few experiments. Let's find the entrance where the piece of the victim's apron and the mysterious chalk message were found. Look at these signs, Watson. We are in the Jewish High Street.
Aha! I was wondering if there was any indication. Oh, hi there.
There's the spot where the apron and the message were found by PC Long. Now, let's recreate the scene. Remember, Watson, it was raining that night. Find me something with which to mimic raindrops hitting this wall while I write something with my chalk.
The Jews are not the men that will be blamed for nothing. But what does it mean?
Have you found something for us to pour water from, Watson?
Find a container and some water. Let me remind you that it's night time and the street is deserted, Holmes.
So we are in an empty street with not much of anything around really. But something tells me I'm sure that we will find something.
I have no reason to go that way. That may come in handy, who knows? An old wooden pole. A merchant probably threw it out. That may come in handy, who knows?
Who knows indeed.
A watering can, that's what I need, but I can't reach it. A watering can, that's what I need, but I can't reach it.
Oh, fine. There we go. That was pretty fortunate.
Water. Yes, I have, Holmes.
If this message were written by the killer, then it would have been lying in this entrance for up to 35 minutes before being discovered. Let's find out in what state it must have been. This message could not have withstood an entire night in the rain. During the investigations carried out on the night of the double murder, PC Hulse inspected the entrances of this street around 2:20 a.m. and confirmed to have seen nothing out of the ordinary. At 2:55 a.m., 35 minutes later, PC Long found Catherine Edow's piece of apron and the message in chalk. This message would not have withstood a whole night in the rain, as had I continued to water it for a little longer, I would certainly have erased it. It was written, therefore, at the moment when the piece of apron was dumped. This substantiates PC Hulse's statement, which stated he had seen neither of these during his rounds. After its discovery, it was guarded and protected from the rain, which was subsiding, which explains why it was still legible when it was erased at 5:30. My dear Watson, when you met P.C. Smith on his rounds in the street, where was he? On the pavement or in the middle of the road?
In the middle of the road, Holmes, without a shadow of a doubt.
Good. You will go down the street with your lantern as if you were a policeman on patrol, using Smith's position as a guide. As soon as you see the entrance where I used the watering can, tell me if you see anything.
Hang on. If that piece of apron is evidence, then why is it still there? Or have I missed something?
There, Holmes. From here, I can see something written.
Can you read it?
No.
Do you see the white rag, Watson?
I see something on the ground, but I'm not sure if it's what you were talking about.
PC Long, who found the piece of apron, was examining the interior of the entrances, and yet nobody would have predicted that this piece of material would be discovered on the very night of the murder by a policeman on patrol.
What are you trying to get at, Holmes?
Let's look at this message on the wall, Watson. The Jews are not the men that will be blamed for nothing. In other words, the Jews were possibly blamed for nothing, but that will no longer be the case. Reading this message naturally begs one question. What would that be, Watson?
Why?
Indeed, Watson, why? For what reason would one have the right to blame the Jews in the future? Remember, Lestrade was killed near a club for socialist Jews, Edaus not far from a synagogue and the Imperial Club, and finally, this piece of apron dropped here. This building is occupied by Jewish families. The killer really did go out of his way to incriminate the Jews living in the area.
It's a bit obvious, Holmes.
Yes, but with the rumours, Watson, the author of this message would have received a response to his strategy.
You are right, Holmes. So perhaps it's a good thing this message was erased.
Whoever took the decision to do this is a man of great wisdom and courage. Let's return to Baker Street, Watson. I have some pipes to smoke to help me think more clearly.
Let's go back to Baker Street. Home, sweet home.
So is this just a rag or is it the apron? Anyway.
I had nightmares all night, Holmes. As for you, I bet you didn't get a wink of sleep, did you? It's this chalk message business, isn't it?
Among other things.
And this lunatic is still running free. If only we knew what he looked like.
But we do know, Watson. We have a fairly accurate description.
I must have missed an episode of your adventures, Holmes. Not only have I heard you discredit the value of our eyewitnesses, but the few descriptions we do have don't seem to correspond.
An inaccurate account can regain its value if we can discover why and to what extent the truth must be rewritten. We've learned a great many things tonight, and I'm able to tell you what our man looks like.
Really?
Yes, and we're going to need a few things, Watson. Find me 3 mannequins, my worker's costume, my 3 full wigs, one of your worn garments, yes, that can be used for the workman's outfit, and one of your old suits. Oh, and my deerstalker, the one I never wear, but everyone seems to think I wear day and night. We shall place our mannequins here, Watson.
I do find it slightly odd that they have 3 mannequins just lying around the place.
A wig? This will come in handy.
You didn't say that about the other 2 wigs that we picked up.
So, as for one of the murders, we have no witnesses whatsoever. As for the 3 other, we have at least one person who claims to have seen the victims talking to a man a few minutes before their death. Do you remember whom these would be, Watson?
So we need the testimonies of 3 witnesses. And one of those is Abraham's statement. Constable Smith's statement. And I believe it is... Oh, okay, it's quite far down.
Bravo, Watson. There are our 3 witnesses.
Now let's go back into these. And I believe it is quite far down. The man must have been 30 years old, about 5'7". But there's also here a separate witness statement, well, account from a friend, that the man was 5'3" taller than the woman, who was 5 feet tall. Loose dark jacket, grey cap, and a red scarf around his neck. We don't have any scarves. So, let's see. 30 years old. Let's try the blonde wig.
There is an error, Watson. Let's reread Abraham's testimony.
Well, I already went there.
Excellent. Now, on to the next step.
Okay.
Indeed, Watson, that's the right size for Abraham's mannequin. The account given by Mr. Solomonovich's friend is incorrect in at least one point. The first Joseph said that the man was at least 5'7" tall. The second Joseph said he was 3 inches taller than the victim, whom we know was 5 feet tall, which would suggest a height of 5'3". Don't forget that it was this second Joseph who attracted his friend's attention towards the couple on the other side of the road. We can assume he got a very good look at them.
And then Constable Smith. Barely 30 years old, or even less. But puts him at as young, well, puts him at 26 years old at the youngest. 5'8" at the most. Dark brown moustache.
Perfect, Watson.
Right. Testimony of E. Long, which states that he was at least 40 years old. And approximately 5'3", brown deerstalker hat, dark coat. Dark hair and moustache. Okay.
Perfect, Watson. As for young P.C. Smith's account, he must have been mistaken about this person's real height. It is only an inch or two after all, and we can attribute the same height as the other two.
An inch or two? That's like 5 inches.
Bravo, Watson. Our mannequins have been recreated based on the correct accounts. Now, Watson, let's see in what ways these statements differ and how the witnesses could have been mistaken. Let's look at these wigs and moustaches. Let's start by taking the first Joseph's testimony, who saw the man head-on in a well-lit spot and in which he noted fair hair. Now, let's consider the same person, but in the lighting and angle of the other two witnesses, in the darkness of night, with poor artificial lighting from above. Put out the light, Watson. Thus, poor lighting and a backlit subject can affect our perception of shades and colours. The wigs from Abraham's mannequin took on the same colour as the other two. The three testimonies, therefore, don't contradict one another, and we can apply the same facial hair to all three mannequins. Turn on the light, Watson.
Oh, that was a bad subtitle.
Yes, I have, Holmes.
Well done, Watson. With regards to the murderer's hair, the three witnesses should agree on Abraham's testimony. As Joseph is the only one who saw our man in full light, his hair must therefore be fair. You see, Watson, it is hard to draw objective conclusions when one is an eyewitness to an event. This leads us to reconsider the various statements regarding the supposed age of the man. Even if you are face to face with someone in full light and for a period of several hours, to what extent can you determine their exact age? And even more so if you observe them for only a few seconds and or from behind. We must allow some flexibility when considering our witnesses' statements, but always scientific flexibility.
Okay, so we have age ranges between 3 to 5 years. That's 4, 5, 4, and 3.
Perfect, Watson.
7 to 10? Wow, okay.
Excellent. Now, on to the next step. Excellent. Now, on to the next step.
Yes, I have, Holmes.
Now that we have fully considered the witness accounts, let's see to what extent they agree. If we apply the range of error for each of our dummies, we can deduce the age of our murderer as precisely as possible.
Well, basically it's the number that appears in all three, and that is 33.
Perfect, Watson. Within a margin of 1 year, Watson, the age of our murderer is 33 years.
But the man described by Smith was dressed respectably, whereas the other two were poorly dressed.
Indeed, but Whitechapel's respectively could quite easily describe the Sunday bests that all lower-class men own. Now, let's place ourselves in the shoes of Liz Stride's killer. He has just slain his victim and sees Louis Diemschutz discover her body. Our killer is at great risk if he stays in the area. He therefore gets away from this spot. But he wants to kill again. However, he might have been spotted in the area before having committed the murder by a constable on his round, perhaps, who managed to get his description. What do you think the killer will do?
The murders happened very early in the morning. I doubt there would have been a closed shop open. So he must have returned home and changed while looking for another victim.
Go back home or to a safe location, change his clothes and leave again in search of another victim.
It's the only possible explanation, Watson. The man returned to the safety of his lodgings and then decided to go out again with new clothes and repeat his sinister nocturnal work. That's how the discrepancies between the witnesses with regards to clothing can be explained.
What a cold-blooded animal!
And what determination! Powerful motives are pushing this man. Thus, we can conclude that the respectable man with the package may very well have been seen by the two Josephs.
Even if it is just a mannequin, it's giving me goosebumps. But have we really made any progress, Holmes? I mean, there must be thousands of men in Whitechapel who match this description, wouldn't you say?
You're right, Watson. We have worked on who, now let's work on where. We need a map of Whitechapel, and please also find me a pencil, 2 compasses, one of which can draw ellipses. We'll need a map, Watson. First of all, let's place our 4 murders on this map, as well as the spot where the graffito appeared, and the piece of apron was dropped.
Let's see.
Perfect, Watson. Let's connect each crime scene to the one out of the others that is the furthest. You see, Watson, the murders aren't grouped together, but seem to be spread out like cardinal points around a central zone. The killer obviously wanted to avoid returning to the previous scenes of his crimes, assuming that they would be more closely watched, or that he could be recognized.
So, the killer lives at the centre of this cross?
In the vicinity, most certainly, but how near? We cannot afford to get it wrong. If you concentrate, Watson, you will notice that the murders are roughly equidistant from the intersection point of the diagonals. Let's focus on the night of the double murder. Remember, Watson, it took us 20 minutes to get from Dutfield's Yard to Mitre Square. Let's draw a line from one to the other. Perfect. We didn't make the trip as the crow flies, but that would not harm our estimate. Let's suppose the killer left Dutfield's Yard at 1 a.m. and arrived in Mitre Square at 1:35 a.m. when he was seen by the 2 Josephs. If he took 5 minutes to change his clothes, that leaves a range of 10 minutes to determine where this man's lodgings are. We must determine the area in which one can go from Dutfield's Yard to Mitre Square in less than half an hour. To do this, let's draw an ellipsis. The length between Dutfield's Yard and Mitre Square corresponds to 20 minutes. By adding half, we get a distance of 30 minutes. By taking the 2 right segments, each starting from the 2 murder scenes, and which the sum of the lengths makes 30 minutes, we get our ellipses.
Okay. This one is slightly off for some reason. Now the ellipsis, I believe, should be covering both of these, but for some reason it doesn't. We need to extend it slightly. Nope, that didn't work.
There we are, Watson. Our killer lives in this area.
It's still rather a vast area, Holmes.
Yes, indeed, and our goal is to reduce this area as much as we can. We must consider the fact that the murder at Mitre Square was committed under a certain amount of pressure, given that the killer knew he was wanted for the acts he committed not long before. We can assume that he had to do it in a safe zone, that is, an area not far from where he lives. This is especially true of an act such as the graffiti he carried out after 2 murders. Let's trace a circle around this point, with the distance separating it from Mitre Square as the radius. This will enable us to determine our killer's safe zone. Our killer must surely live inside this circle. Now, let's intersect it with the ellipsis that we previously determined. There we are, Watson, the Aldgate district.
Shouldn't we inform the police so that they can concentrate their efforts on this area of Whitechapel?
It is probably already crawling with inspectors, Watson, and I doubt that they would take us seriously, even if they were willing to listen to what we had to say. Let's focus instead on understanding the killer's modus operandi. We know our murderer preys on prostitutes who are penniless, weak, sick or alcoholic, that he distracts them the moment before killing them, and that he left an anonymous message inciting anti-Semitic hatred at the entrance of a building occupied by Jews. How would you describe this man?
What a coward!
Indeed, he is a person of great cowardice. Let's look at his murders, and in particular the depredations on the corpses, putting aside that of Liz Stride, because on that occasion his work was left unfinished. If we recall the observations made on the victims and the parts that were mutilated or damaged on each of the bodies, without forgetting the fact that he also removed one or more organs, we can ascertain that our killer evolves during the course of the murders, cowardly and still evolving. And yet, look at the location of our first murder, that of Polly Nichols in Bucks Row. It is the most distant from the area our killer would appear to live. Perhaps this murder was preceded by another within the killer's area. I believe a cowardly killer would commit his first murder in an area close to his home, in order to find refuge as quickly as possible on carrying out the act.
Holmes, an idea just occurred to me that fills me with dread. This evolution of which you speak.
He will pursue his next victim as long as the conditions permit him to continue killing Watson.
But how could one go even further in this horror? Look at what he did to that woman, Catherine Eddowes.
In order to avoid having to answer that question, we must act with haste and planning. Watson, I suggest you inform yourself on the mutilations sustained by the victims. We played with the idea that this could be an act of vengeance against prostitutes. If the mutilations correspond to areas affected by a specific pathology, perhaps the killer wanted to give an eye for an affliction he felt the prostitutes he knew were responsible for.
And this trail leading to Dr. Tumblety, Holmes?
I also have a few things to look into in the meantime. I still have a primary witness to track down, not to mention old trails I've yet to pursue. See you soon, Watson. When we first spoke about the Bucks Row murder with Watson, he was reading a newspaper, The Star, dated September 1st, 1888, I believe, which mentioned similar murders in the preceding months. I have no chance of finding the police reports, but perhaps I could find some information at the Central News Agency. I must go there at once. Afterwards, I'll go back to see Abraham, the owner of the pet shop in Whitechapel. The second Joseph's statement would lead me to believe that he may know the man spotted on the corner of Church Passage that night. If that's the case, I must find this witness so I can question him.